A 60-year-old man who relies on medication to survive is actually a top killer with a bounty of 7.6 billion. Countless people have died at his hands, and even the world's top mercenary teams are terrified of him. He began learning how to assemble firearms at the age of 10. While other children were playing with mud, he was learning how to use a knife every day of the year. While others were experiencing their first loves during their naive youth, he was learning how to eavesdrop on intelligence until his ears bled. He was a Russian spy, assassinated important officials, and survived terrorist organizations. However, this man, renowned in serving South Korean conglomerates, was abandoned by a newly appointed young boss simply because he was aging and had developed cancer. Old things should be scrapped. Sometime after, Pietro opened a bookstore and led a relatively peaceful life, following his doctor's advice and taking various anti-cancer drugs daily. He dedicated 50 years of his youth to the company with no regrets, his only regret being that he lived most of his life without having a single photo of himself. However, today's visit by a high school girl broke this tranquility. The girl claimed she came to buy materials for her siblings' middle school studies, but when Pietro turned to search for them, she had already drawn a sharp knife, ready to attack him. Yet, with a single phrase, Pietro stunned the girl. "I've done dirty work as a killer for 50 years. How could I not smell the blood on you?" Just by meeting face to face, Pietro's sharp gaze made the girl realize that the one to die today would not be him, but herself. Suddenly, Pietro swiftly moved in front of the girl, but his reason for doing so was not to kill her, but because two killers had appeared on the bookshelf. Apparently, their organization's assassination plan included a plan B, which involved eliminating even those who failed. As Pietro tried to stand, the girl noticed he was bleeding from his torso. Pietro tried escaping with the girl in the tight space. Picking up a gun and swiftly turning around, he saw that the girl had already been taken hostage by the two men. Pietro wanted to save her, but his body wouldn't move the way he wanted it to. "Are you sure this is the Pietro?" A tall man in a trench coat, tattooed with a blue-ringed octopus and known as the #1 jiu-jitsu master in South Korea, codename Octopus, slowly approached. "The only reason I'm here is that my boss is very uncomfortable. Thousands of people are after you because your bounty is worth 7.6 billion won. That is the same amount on my account." "It is. It's the money you've worked so hard for your entire life. So, please make sure you die by my hand." Suddenly, they started beating Pietro while he was pinned to the bookshelf. Then he was thrown into the next corridor. Seemingly, Pietro was knocked out. "It's a small gift from me." Pietro had thrown a flashbang right in Octopus's face, which illuminated the bookstore in an instant. By the time they came to their senses, Pietro had already disappeared. He escaped to a park, dragging his wounded and old body in the rain. Despite once being a formidable figure, he could not resist his cancer. He reflected on his past, dedicated 50 years to the company without ever craving riches or glory, yet he mercilessly killed those who were about to die, which left him utterly unfulfilled. Moreover, the money in his bank account was an absolute must, as it was an inheritance for his most beloved. However, he ultimately fell in the park under the rain. Meanwhile, two subordinates were discussing the legend of this man. They racked their brains, but couldn't figure out how strong he must be regarded as a god. Suddenly, a sound interrupted them. "That was my first photo ever taken. I don't know what happened, but when I woke up, this body seemed full of vitality." The man with a ponytail stepped forward. "This is not a place you can just walk into. I know where I am. Take me to where Octopus is." "So, you are in our field as well, but that means you must die." The ponytail man swung his fist, but to his surprise, the young man had blocked it completely with one hand. The next second, the ponytail man's hand was crushed with pure grip strength. Behind him, the other subordinate flew into the young man while swinging a knife. Casually, the man was stopped in midair. 5 blows was given to him in an instant. To the side, the ponytail man picked up a knife. "Where did you come from?" But the young man spoke unhurriedly. "Killers are divided into 3 ranks. Third-rate killers use knives, simple and fast. Second-rate killers are strong and skilled in punches and kicks. First-rate killers, however, can use anything in the world as a weapon." Seeing the man holding an octopus leg as a weapon, the ponytail man felt extremely humiliated and charged at him without hesitation. In moments, the knife was disarmed with a whip of the tentacle. Then, the tentacle was wrapped around the ponytail man's neck. With pure strength, the ponytail man was swung up and over towards a boiling pot of soup, crashing into it with a big splash. Both men were incapacitated in just a few moments. The man slowly picked up the photo. "This was a good shot, but it's a pity this person is already dead. Now, a new Pietro has returned, young once again. Don't come looking for me. I'll find you." The first thing he did after returning to youth was to check his body in the mirror, because during the rescue of the high school girl, he had been shot in the abdomen, but now the wound on his belly had healed, and even the cancer cells devouring his life had disappeared. This young body retained the experience and skills of his 50-year career as a killer. The old Pietro they were looking for might never be found, but the new Pietro, now unrecognizable, could do anything he wanted with this young body. Just then, despite the no smoking sign in the restroom, 2 old Westerners were smoking away. Pietro approached and simply advised, "This is a non-smoking area." The big man replied by slapping Pietro's face. "Get lost. I'm in a good mood, so I'm letting you go." However, Pietro chose not to retaliate. Instead, he walked to the restroom door. As everyone else left, he locked it from the inside. Even though he is now a 20-year-old young man, he still has the heart of a 60-year-old. He wanted these two to understand the consequences of disrespecting elders in Korea. The big man had no interest in listening to his nonsense, caring little for talk of respecting elders. At that moment, Pietro delivered a swift liver punch, simultaneously targeting the throat with his left hand at great speed. By the time the big man realized, his throat was already crushed. The big man fell instantly. The tanned man stood frozen, raising his knife, unaware that he was facing a top killer. He tried threatening Pietro, but in response, Pietro lectured him that he was holding the knife the wrong way. The tanned man charged at Pietro, but was swiftly countered, seemingly getting stabbed by the knife. Just then, the knife was now in Pietro's hand. The tanned man screamed in pain, thinking he had been stabbed. "I didn't stab you. If I did, you would have died 3 times already. Who exactly are you?" Pietro stepped forward and grabbed his shoulder. "You'd better mind your own business about the matters of the underworld. If you knew who I am, you wouldn't leave here alive." Facing Pietro's chilling menace, the tanned man was so frightened that he couldn't utter a word, and his pants were already soaked with urine. By then, Pietro had already changed into the big man's clothes, which surprisingly fit him well. However, at this moment, he began to worry because his phone showed that the money in his bank account had already been emptied. He told them before that that money accumulated over 50 years of his career as a killer was not to be touched. Pietro remembered his past. He too had grown up in the Honor Orphanage. Over 50 years, the orphanage, under the guise of caring for orphans, had transformed into the Glory Club, now a huge cartel that spread its influence in numerous political places. Although it was the company that raised him, now he had to destroy this business empire step by step. Meanwhile, Octopus was at a warehouse face to face with his target. The target was surprised he came alone. "No need to bring anyone else if it's just you. You Glory Club members are too greedy. Let's just finish this quickly, but I set up a festival just for you." Then suddenly, numerous muscular men came out of the shadows. The target knew that Octopus was not one of the disciples, so his arrogance was off-putting. "Treat our guest well." As his words fell, all of the mercenaries charged at Octopus. Just then, the target was on the ground shaking. These formidable men were easily dispatched. Octopus was wrapped around one of the men as if he had no bones, choking them out blue. His head locked at a 180-degree angle, as if their focus was never meant to be divided. Finally, Octopus charged at his target proper, with his body facing the other way. Before long, Octopus and the girl returned to the headquarters base. Octopus knew that a warrant would soon be issued, and countless people would begin searching for Pietro. He hoped the girl could find Pietro's whereabouts, but the girl, remembering how Pietro had saved her, had changed her view of him, yet she had no choice but to agree to Octopus's request. In the VIP restaurant of the branch, they were not supposed to receive external guests at this time. "Do you have a meeting with us?" "No, but I have a grudge about my card, worth about 7.6 billion. Hearing this figure, Octopus first smiled slightly, then showed a sinister expression, instructing the waiter to close the door immediately. Octopus was curious how this young man knew about Pietro, wondering if he could be Pietro's son. But in his memory, Pietro had always been alone. For now, if he didn't explain clearly, he would not be allowed to leave alive. Octopus raised 2 fingers. "You have 2 choices. 1. Tell me where Pietro is, then you can leave. 2. Get shot in the head and die here. There is a third option, but those who hear it have never survived. Option 3. I am Pietro." Hearing this, Octopus felt he was being mocked. What nonsense was this silly young man talking about? Octopus declared that if Pietro did not tell the truth, he would taste the bullet. "How are you related to Pietro? If you really want to know, come and kill me." Before the waiter could fire his weapon, something pierced through his neck at blinding speed. The waiter dropped dead, revealing a chopstick in his neck, piercing the major artery precisely. The girl was astonished by Pietro's skills. What was more surprising was that Pietro looked about her age. It would be hard to find such a skilled young man throughout South Korea. However, this move intrigued Octopus. Such skill is indeed impressive, but still, you must die. Octopus quickly drew his gun and shot at Pietro, but Pietro quickly blocked the shots with the table. This ain't a movie. A table can't stop bullets. A bright red liquid slowly flowed on the floor, leading Octopus to mistake it for blood. However, upon closely inspecting it by the table, he realized that the red liquid was just chili oil. He hadn't seen where Pietro had gone. While searching for Pietro's traces, suddenly, Pietro appeared above a pillar, his mouth bulging with something. Suddenly, Pietro spat a burst of liquid onto Octopus' face. While Octopus was blinded, Pietro attacked with a fluid combination attack, ending with a blow to the chin. He's too fast. Before Octopus could even think, Pietro was grasping at him already, and twisted his neck 180 degrees, breaking it. And Octopus fell without even having a chance to retaliate. Looking at the fallen Octopus, Pietro felt a hint of pity. Just then, Octopus's pupils dilated suddenly, flashing back to his youth. He was taught that if there was a stronger enemy in front of him, that he should attack when their guard is down. The do-or-die tactic. Suddenly, he grabbed Pietro's foot. Using his extreme flexibility, he locked his critical joints until they broke. The force tightened more and more, either leading to suffocation or death death by broken bones. Do you get how I survived this long? Die. But the next second, Octopus was stunned. Standing before him was an unharmed Pietro, and what he had grabbed was the body of his subordinate. It turns out he had mistaken the two due to his impaired vision. At this moment, Octopus finally realized that the man before him far surpassed the 12 disciples of the Glory Club. Octopus frantically begged for mercy, trying to make a deal with Pietro. He grabbed the girl. You can take her. Whatever you ask her to do, she will obey. She's inexperienced, but she's useful. It's a deal. Octopus was thrilled and quickly moved away from Pietro. The do-or-die tactic. Octopus stopped in his tracks after hearing this. The greatest threat in battle is showing your back to the enemy. Hearing this, he froze. It was a very familiar admonition. As a child, Octopus had a mentor who was one of the 12 disciples. The mentor had taught him the do-or-die tactic. Utilize the moment your enemy's guard is down. Now, he recalled the mentor's demeanor and expression, which were identical to this young man's. Pietro, do you remember what I said? The people who learn who Pietro is, none survive. Pietro charged at Octopus and used his own technique against him, twisting and turning his body beyond his own limits. Octopus was mangled in the air as Pietro landed. Not long after, atop a building, a man was reporting, Octopus is dead. All surveillance footage there has been erased, and no trace was left at the scene. Things are getting interesting. Notify all members of the Glory Club. I'm offering 7.6 billion as a reward, and will commence a full-scale pursuit of Pietro in 1 hour. As a top killer, Pietro perfectly disposed of several bodies, and then walked onto the street. People looked up as every high-rise building displayed wanted posters for Pietro, and even the flyers distributed by staff were filled with his pictures. What seemed like a harmless advertisement was actually the Glory Club's worldwide manhunt order. Yet, Pietro was unflustered facing this, as he was on a mission of revenge with a completely new appearance. Although he was alone at the moment, many tasks required assistance, so he thought of someone. Despite that person's pet and some behaviors making him uncomfortable, Pietro decided to seek the person out. Pietro then went to a public restroom crowded with homeless people. However, there was a hidden compartment there. He barely found and pressed the button by moonlight, opening a door that led to an underground passage. Below was a room of dazzling splendor, a stark contrast to the simplicity above. Suddenly, his throat was pressed by a spike wielded by a woman with a German shepherd by her side. The woman was blind, though her eyes couldn't see. Her nose was exceptionally sensitive. She could clearly smell that this was a young man without the scent of alcohol and not a local homeless person. Most importantly, she could sense a strong bloodlust emanating from him. Pietro didn't want to fight her, just wanted her to calm down. The woman mistook him for an assassin from the Glory Club. She swung her cane around, but Pietro managed to dodge every attack. But still, Pietro was backed into a wall. Just then, the woman threw her cane at him, followed by a flying knee. But unexpectedly, the woman was now being thrown into the floor. But at that moment, the bloodlust on Pietro disappeared. Just then, the German shepherd, named Alexander Miking, suddenly charged, but the next moment shocked the woman. The dog, typically wary of strangers, was playfully frolicking with this young man she had never seen before. After a few rounds of drinks, the woman, named Jylin, was still in shock, continually rubbing Pietro's face. She couldn't believe that the man who was 60 years old and had an old man's smell had transformed into a young man. Even his skin was better than hers. How did you die? I want to try it too, so I can die and come back to life and become youthful. It turned out that this woman was an old acquaintance of Pietro. So, you want to fight Glory? How? I'm going into the Eye of the Storm. They had already issued a warrant for him, and he needed to grasp the group's information as soon as possible. To achieve that, he must become a killer for the Glory Club. Initially, the woman thought this was absurd, but then she had a flash of inspiration. She realized that no one would recognize the younger Pietro, so it seemed feasible for Pietro to enter the organization with his current appearance. If he succeeds, the Glory Club would be planning Pietro's assassination while being at the palm of his hands. But the most important condition was that all killers of the Glory Club must come from the Honor Orphanage. Even though old Pietro had come from there, his younger self is an outsider, unable to join the Glory's killer team. However, Pietro simply smiled and said there was another way, which was to enter the Sacred Divine Honor High School. This was a private school established by the Glory Foundation, ostensibly a regular school, but actually an organization that trained killers, even establishing a killer class. He needed to enter this school, be recognized in the killer class, and then successfully infiltrate the group. But on Pietro's first day at school, he was immediately surrounded by female classmates. Not long after, at the stage of the school gym, he spoke into the mic and introduced himself as Kim Sungu in front of all the teachers and students. I am a killer. This announcement shocked everyone. He did this to draw the attention of the school's senior leadership. However, the first people he attracted were not the senior leaders, but the school bully. The reason was that Pietro attracted many female students, which included Yejin, who had been Jang Yiziel's girlfriend for 22 days. Jang Yiziel said he was truly in love with Yejin, but Pietro's sudden appearance disrupted everything. Jang Yiziel decided to get his revenge, swinging his massive fist. But in that moment, Pietro dodged and counterattacked. For the first time, Jang Yiziel sensed death. However, Pietro stopped inches away from his his face, only flicking his forehead sharply, sending Jang Yizil to his knees. Just then, a teacher came running over, pinching Pietro's cheek. "You little rascal, daring to fight and cause trouble under my watch. Come with me, you're cleaning today." As they left, the girl who had bought books at the bookstore happened to be at this school too. She was shocked, wondering, how could this person be here? Then, at lunchtime, Pietro found the girl and sat next to her for lunch. She claimed had no appetite and just wanted to eat quietly. However, looking at the mountain of food in front of her, he thought, is this what she calls a lack of appetite? Although she was reluctant to talk to Pietro, at least she let him be. It turns out, after dealing with Octopus, Pietro had not chosen to kill her but had given her a chance to live, on the condition that she tell the organization that it was all done by the old man in the picture. She didn't understand why he was still looking for her since she had kept her promise. "I didn't come here specifically for you. It's just a coincidence, but it's also fortunate. You can help me, since we're on the same boat. I'll be counting on you, Yunbiel." "No, Liuna." Hearing this, Liuna was stunned. How did he know my real name? By the time she came to her senses, Pietro had already left. Next, Pietro's performance at school was outstanding. He easily outran the fastest in Divine Honor High School. During the vision test, his vision was an astonishing 6.0. In cooking class, the teacher advised him to be careful not to cut himself. But for him, who had started learning how to use knives at the age of 10, carving an apple was a piece of cake. Meanwhile, the teacher was loudly scolding 3 troublemakers for not cleaning properly and smoking instead. They completely disregarded the teacher's authority, pushed him to the ground, advising the teacher not to meddle if he didn't want his teaching license revoked. Just then, Pietro came out to take out the trash and saw what was happening. Without hesitation, he stepped forward. "Did you hit the teacher?" One of them, showing utter disregard for kinship, spat a thick glob of spit on Pietro and threatened him to leave if he didn't want to get beaten up. Seeing that Pietro was unfazed, the troublemaker swung at him. Pietro expertly dodged all of the punch, then easily swept the leg of the troublemaker. Behind him, a student with a brick was charging at him, but the next second, the brick was shattered to dust with a strike. After a brief exchange, all 3 were thoroughly subdued, kneeling and begging for mercy before running off, even leaving their phone on the ground. However, the teacher suddenly kicked at Pietro, who easily blocked it. At that moment, the teacher showed a satisfied smile. The teacher noticed that even during the scuffle, Pietro's coffee didn't spill from the paper cup, which confirmed to him that Pietro was a transfer student with great potential. Therefore, he asked Pietro why he learned those moves. Pietro confessed he wanted to seek revenge for he lost everything, that he was the same as dead. "Kim Sungu, do you have any thoughts of joining the volunteering club?" It turned out he was a killer instructor for the Glory Club, secretly observing Pietro's performance, whether in gym class, during the vision test, in cooking class, or even during the recent scuffle. The teacher lead him through the hallways. There is a killer development class hidden within this school, specifically designed to train future killers. We call it the volunteering club. Under the alias Kim Sungu, Pietro infiltrated the enemy's ranks. He's a new volunteer who'll be working with us from today onwards. Liuna was shocked that Pietro had suddenly appeared here too. "I am Kim Sungu. Thanks for the warm welcome." But Pietro thought that the people here did not look like killers, except for the 2 in front of him. One was Dako Hyung, known for his speed, and the other was Dako Jae, known for his strength. Both were graduates of the 58th generation from the Honor Orphanage and believed that those not from the orphanage had no right to be in this class. Even the killer instructor could do nothing but say, "Then let's have a proper welcome ceremony." Everyone in the class was eager to welcome Pietro, but the Dako brothers were the ones that stepped up. Liuna immediately stepped in to mediate, hoping everyone could get along peacefully, but Dako Jae pushed her aside, telling her to mind her own business. Liuna knew how formidable Pietro was. It seemed like she was saving Pietro, but it was the brothers who needed saving. Then, Dako Hyung and Dako Jae immediately attacked Pietro. Facing their onslaught, Pietro handled it with ease. The 2 claimed that this place was not for neighborhood hooligans, but was intended to train top killers in the world, like him. And him referred to the very first disciple, Pietro. The 3 of them instantly put some distance between each other, and Pietro taunted the 2 brothers to come at him together. Dako Hyung and Dako Jae were instantly furious and charged at Pietro intensely, but the fight concluded with the brothers exhausted and sweaty, but they had a proud smile on their face. Their classmates were praising them for their victory. Meanwhile, Pietro has left and was walking the halls alone when a voice stopped him. It was Liuna. "Are you looking down on the volunteer club?" Pietro was speechless, wondering what she was talking about. Liuna had been observing all along and noticed something during the fight with Dako Hyung and Dako Jae. "You never put any strength into your punches, and unlike them, you didn't even break a sweat." Liuna pinned Pietro to the wall. "What is your reason for being here? What are you scheming?" But to this, Pietro stayed silent. Then he awkwardly slid downwards to escape her grasp. "Sorry, but it's time for lunch." It's midnight. The next day, the killer instructor received an urgent mission. The chairman of Deha Group, Choi Eun-chang, who is one of the biggest sponsors of the Glory Club, had commissioned them. Recently, there had been several cases of teenage kidnappings, one of which was the chairman's only son. The task was to rescue his son and eliminate all those involved in the incident. Why not handle it through the police? The reason for the chairman's Pietro's request was because he wanted revenge. Moreover, to the group that is successful will be sure to receive a volunteer certificate through the chairman's recommendations. In other words, they will officially become killers. Raise your hand if you want to do this. Hearing this, Pietro immediately raised his hand, along with Lee Yuna. Dako Hyung and Dako Jae also confidently presented themselves. The next day, the teacher assigned them to investigate at the amusement park because this is where he was last seen. The primary mission was to secure the son and take down the kidnapper. However, before investigating the target's whereabouts, they went to enjoy the amusement park first. The brothers rode the merry-go-round, then later raced with the bumper cars. Pietro and Lee Yuna were no exception. They were at a shooting gallery with a very mischievous owner. He had weighed down the targets while the clueless Lee Yuna was inspecting her fake gun. But the next second, they claimed all the big prizes effortlessly. This was the first time the Dako brothers had encountered so many fun things, and they had already forgotten their previous displeasures. Only Pietro knew this might be their first time at an amusement park. After all, having gone through various devil-like training since childhood, their childhoods were probably like his, not knowing what fun was, only endless drills. At this moment, the smiles on their faces were genuinely joyful. Just as they were enjoying the afternoon, Lee Yuna's phone suddenly received a signal from Choi Yunjeol's AirPods, Chairman Choi's only son. Surprisingly, this signal was coming from the women's restroom. Lee Yuna followed the signal and went inside. Although nothing unusual had occurred yet, the signal definitely originated from the woman. "Where did you get those AirPods?" Her facial expression had frightened the woman, which alarmed a burly man outside. He started to threaten Lee Yuna for what she did, then started pushing her around. Then, he swung his hand at her, but suddenly, Lee Yuna flipped herself up on top of the man and wrapped herself around him from behind and almost stabbed the man with a lollipop stick. She subconsciously did all of this in self-defense. The next moment, she was back on the ground. "Now tell me, where did you get those?" On the other side, the trio had not seen Lee Yuna for a while. Just as Pietro was about to contact her on his phone, Lee Yuna came running up, panting, and claimed she had found Choi Yunjeol's earphones, which had apparently been lost in the haunted house. Hearing this, Pietro had already suspected it, as he noticed that within the entire amusement park, only the haunted house had almost no foot traffic. But the problem was, the software showed that tickets for the haunted house were fully booked. "It's the haunted house," Pietro and Lee Yuna claimed in unison. They immediately opened the door to the haunted house. Dako Hyung and Dako Jae were also full of vigor, wanting to search for clues inside. However, once inside, both were so scared that their legs turned to jelly. Only Pietro kept his eyes fixed ahead. He knew something was very eerie here. The haunted house, which should have been packed with people, was eerily quiet, even lacking staff. Pietro immediately warned them to be ready for a fight. Just then, thick smoke began to rise from the floor. Soon after, everyone collapsed to the ground. As it turned out, the smoke was all hypnotic. However, from the very beginning, part of the plan was getting themselves kidnapped as well. Not far away, a figure approached step by step. Meanwhile, the killer instructor frantically found the liaison, asking him to urgently contact those kids. However, no matter how much he dialed, no one answered. According to the killer instructor, the person behind the teenage kidnappings was actually the killer Park Sang-do. He was once a disciple candidate but was expelled by the headquarters because the Glory Club couldn't fully control him. The liaison smiled and said the students had mastered various skills and should be fine. But the killer instructor was sweating profusely, unconsciously touching his prosthetic leg. Park Sang-do is a cruel person. The killer instructor presented his leg, claiming that Park Sang-do was the reason for his condition. If he catches them, he'll cut their legs off. Meanwhile, at the warehouse where Park Sang-do stored his victims, Pietro and Lee Yuna were tied to a post unconscious. "Did you know? I put you to sleep with chloroform. When normal people faint from it, they sleep with their mouths open." Lee Yuna, however, had her mouth closed. She knew she had been found out to be awake now. But in that moment, Park Sang-do charged at her with malicious intent. But just then, Lee Yuna's phone caught his attention. He picked up the phone and answered it. "I know it's you, Park Sang-do. If you dare touch a hair on those kids, I'll kill you at all costs, even if it risks my life. It's been a long time, Senior Gwangyu. Don't start with such scary talk. Are you worried I'll cripple these children just like you? How about we make a bet? I'll send you a location, and when you arrive, guess how many legs are still intact. If you're right, I'll return Choi Yunchang's son to you. If you guess wrong, I'll take whatever is left." At this moment, the killer instructor trembled. Park Sang-do turned his head towards another room. The Doggo brothers were yelling around trying to find Lee Yuna and Pietro. "It's best you hurry, Senior." Then Park Sang-do ended the call and left the room. After Park Sang-do left, Lee Yuna quietly opened her eyes. She didn't know what to do next. Her hands were firmly tied, so she instead used her feet. She tried to wake up Pietro, only to find that Pietro was already awake. Lee Yuna quickly pulled her feet back in embarrassment. She then tried to break free, while Pietro watched this unimpressed. He then revealed that he had already broken free a long time ago. Pietro freed Lee Yuna, and the two of them started to move into the next room. On the other side, Dako Hyung and Dako Jae had already woken up. "If you don't want to die, hand over Chairman Choi's son." Park Sang-do smiled slightly. "How about a bet?" Meanwhile, the killer instructor was already on his way. "If you win, I'll release Choi Yunchang Hyang's son. If you lose, then each of you leaves one leg. Dako Hyang and Dako Jae immediately became interested, as it seemed this guy was not just an ordinary office worker. Suddenly, Park Sang-do threw one of the knives over. Bets are more fun when the conditions are fair. Dako Hyang didn't hesitate, picking up the blade and charging forward. You'll regret this. I'm an expert with knives. The two furiously clashed blades, but Park Sang-do seemed a lot calmer. Dako Hyang analyzed his opponent's moves and concluded he was better, and he'll win in a prolonged fight. But then he realized something strange as he was cut. Their blades clashed one more time, then Dako Hyang retreated backward. This knife has no edge. Hearing his words, Park Sang-do menacingly grinned. Just then, Pietro and Lee Yuna followed the noise and arrived. Dako Hyang gestured for them not to interfere, because they were very angry, wanting to show the man what the true strength of the Dako brothers was. From a young age, they underwent various devil-like trainings. In the group's final selection test, they were dropped into a forest without any resources, home to thousands of wild animals. Their task was to survive in this forest, but their only weapon was a handgun with just one bullet. In their desperation to survive, the children would use that bullet at the most critical moment, and some used it to end their own lives. However, Dako Hyang and Dako Jae became brothers in life and death during that test. In that harsh environment, they managed to save their bullets until the very end, and those two bullets was what decided their fate. A month later, only Dako Hyang and Dako Jae survived from the 58th batch. They were shocked to hear an astonishing piece of news. The disciple, Pietro, had also faced this challenge at their age. In 58 years, Pietro was the only one to survive without using his bullet. From that moment, Dako Hyang and Dako Jae spent years striving to become the best like Pietro. The brothers charged in with determination. Dako Jae went low and tackled Park Sang-do, while Dako Hyang flipped up, slashing toward Park Sang-do. Seriously, instead of your leg, maybe I should cut off your arm. Park Sang-do firmly grasped at Dako Hyang's wrist, but the brothers had a plan. Dako Hyang dropped the dull blade onto Dako Jae's hand. He then thrusted forward with the knife, but to Dako Jae's surprise, the blade shattered into pieces. Park Sang-do had broken the knife. It turns out, the blade in Park Sang-do's hand was 3 times heavier than ordinary knives and much harder. This thing is the weapon of a murderer. Park Sang-do came into attack, and surprisingly, Dako Hyang and Dako Jae were easily defeated. Lee Yuna wanted to step forward to help, but was stopped by Pietro. At this moment, Park Sang-do revealed a chilling smile, raising his blade, about to sever Dako Hyang's leg. Just then, Pietro's voice interrupted Park Sang-do. Shall we make a bet? Double the stakes. 2 legs and 2 arms. Take my head too if you like. Hearing this, Park Sang-do tossed a knife to Pietro, clearly delighted, smiling innocently. However, Pietro picked up a colorful tray nearby. This will be enough to deal with you. Park Sang-do, possessing tremendous strength, couldn't help but laugh upon hearing Pietro's words. Don't expect me to go easy just because you're young. Park Sang-do heavily slashed down, but Pietro managed to avoid it. Park Sang-do then relentlessly pursued while Pietro used the tray as a shield to block the attacks. But Park Sang-do charged up another heavy attack. Meanwhile, the killer instructor was panicking as he was driving to the location. The killer instructor had once gathered a team to besiege the rebelling Park Sang-do, composed of 5 veteran B-rank killers. However, during their fight against Park Sang-do, the killer instructor was dumbfounded. Park Sang-do dealt with them easily, his movements surpassing human limits. Even before he could react, Park Sang-do had severed his leg, which ended his career as a killer. Park Sang-do's final slash was incredibly precise, cutting the tray in Pietro's hands in 2. Park Sang-do revealed a smug smile, clearly very pleased with his swordsmanship. Lee Yuna, seeing this, couldn't help but draw a blade, ready to support Pietro at any moment. However, Pietro remained unusually calm. He touched the tray's pattern, applying a great amount of grip strength, and the tray crinkled like paper. Pietro assumed a fighting stance. Thanks to you, I now have a weapon. Park Sang-do scratched his head, clearly understanding that this was no ordinary student, because in the moment his strike landed, Park Sang-do thought he had cut Pietro, but Pietro expertly dodged the attack while blocking at the same time. Park Sang-do no longer underestimated Pietro, took off his coat, and got serious. Throwing his coat as a distraction, Park Sang-do charged forward again to the unfazed Pietro, unleashing a fierce combo. Park Sang-do was confident that he cut something, but then he realized Pietro was gone. Pietro suddenly appeared behind him, slashing his neck. Pietro managed to land a hit on Park Sang-do, which made him back off immediately. The feeling of death was looming over Park Sang-do, but fortunately for him, he managed to block the attack with his hand. Are you really a student? Pietro posed with focus in his eyes. Just then, Pietro suddenly exploded into action, and the two engaged in intense combat. As the fight intensified, Park Sang-do gradually couldn't keep up with Pietro's speed. His steps began to falter, and he even sensed a non-human murderous intent in Pietro's gaze. Lee Yuna could only watch silently. She knew she couldn't intervene, because at that moment she saw multiple images of Pietro. However, just as Pietro was about to deliver a fatal blow to Park Sang-do made a subtle cut on Pietro's face. Suddenly, Park Sang-do pulled out a finer knife. It turned out that hidden inside his curved knife was an even smaller and sharper blade. The weight of the curved knife knife made its power even greater. However, the cost was a reduction in the user's speed, and what Park Sang-do needed now was extreme speed. The two clashed in blinding speeds. Lee Yuna even noticed that Park Sang-do was using the stabbing knife for slicing as well. Just as Park Sang-do was about to stab Pietro, his hand stopped in front of Pietro's neck. Park Sang-do found that his hand suddenly lost strength, even unable to grip the knife firmly. Looking at the falling weapon, he was completely dumbfounded. It seems your hand can no longer exert force. It was only then that Park Sang-do realized, but it was already too late, because from the beginning, Pietro's target was never his neck. Pietro's real target had always been Park Sang-do's hand. What did you do? The flexor, extensor, and abductor muscles, the median, radial, and the ulnar nerves. I've cut them all. Pietro explained that he had never intended to kill Park Sang-do. At this point, Park Sang-do trembled, not just from pain, but also from his tragic childhood. He had suffered brutal humiliation, hung from trees, tormented by bullies, and even chased by ferocious dogs. One day, while being put against two dogs, the bully asked, "Want to make a bet?" When Park Sang-do heard this, it was as if a switch was flipped inside him, deeply stirring his spirit, and his body involuntarily moved. But Park Sang-do didn't go after the two vicious dogs. Instead, he charged at the abuser. He gambled his life, and from then on, betting became an addictive behavior for him. Like being injected with serotonin and adrenaline invisibly, gambling became his nourishment. Every time he bet his life, he felt an endless sense of power. It was precisely because of such thrilling stakes that he won both major and minor victories in every battle. This time, he felt he was facing a colossal being with a terrifying aura, as if a slight misstep would lead to being swallowed by Pietro. Meanwhile, Pietro slowly manipulated the tray, gradually wrapping his entire fist with it. "Let me show you how an egg can break a stone." With just one punch, Park Sang-do's face crumpled like a tin can. Just as Pietro charged again, Park Sang-do suddenly pulled out a hand grenade, threatening, "Kneel down now, or I'll blow us up with the grenade." And inside one of those suitcases is the chairman's son, the one you're looking for. Lee Yuna was immediately shocked. If the bomb explodes, not only Chairman Choi's son, but even we might not escape unscathed. Pietro pondered for a moment. If you don't want to die, then kneel. In that moment, Pietro rushed forward before Park Sang-do could react and stuffed the grenade in his mouth. Then, Pietro pulled the pin of the grenade. "You should know the power of a grenade. If you don't want to die, keep it tight in your mouth." Pietro was completely enraged and decided to teach this scumbag a lesson. Pietro gave a strong strike to the kidney, then another to the back of his head, and as Park Sang-do was falling, Pietro slammed him down with a final punch. Park Sang-do was battered beyond recognition, and the grenade in his mouth made him dare not relax even a bit. Just as Pietro reinserted the pin, Park Sang-do finally felt relief. "Get up, I'm not done yet." Park Sang-do slowly stood up, begging pitifully, "Let's just call it a draw." Lee Yuna and Pietro were dumbfounded at his actions as he continued to beg. Just then, the killer instructor burst through the door, shouting, "Park Sang-do, let those kids go." But the scene in front of him was quite shocking. The once ruthless and tough Park Sang-do was now crying on the ground. To the side, Pietro and Lee Yuna presented Dako Hyung and Dako Jae, who were barely conscious. Before long, the group sent people to clean up the scene. Chairman Choi's son was rescued as scheduled, unharmed, and Park Sang-do was also packaged and taken away, sent to wait for disposition by the Glory Club. However, the killer instructor was deeply troubled. Although the nightmare that ended his career was now over, it was incredible that these few kids could drive Park Sang-do to a dead end. However, Pietro, under the alias Kim Sung-gu, repeatedly denied his true strength, and the killer instructor couldn't say much more. The next day, as scheduled, they received the volunteer certificates from the Glory Club. However, on the elevator to Chairman Choi's office building, Dako Hyung was complaining that they should have gotten an A rank rather than a D rank. But then, when the elevator doors opened, they were all stunned. Two burly female staff members stood in front of them. Dako Hyung frantically pressed the elevator's close button, fearing that if the door closed a second late, they would die there. But when he saw a curvy, pretty female secretary behind him, he started frantically pressing the open door button, his eyes never leaving her. "Come with me. I've been waiting for you for a long time. Chairman Choi instructed us to treat you well." They then enjoyed an extremely lavish dinner, and were even fashioned with a set of tailor-made suits. Afterwards, the secretary took them to Deha Group's military arsenal. There were thousands of weapons there, of every kind imaginable. The arsenal was enough to equip an entire military team, and Chairman Choi instructed them to pick whatever they wanted, as much as they wanted. Dako Hyung and Dako Jae had never seen such a scene before, their eyes nearly glowing green. However, they pretended to be nonchalant. "We'll just take a little bit. We'll have them delivered for you." Lee Yuna was more interested in knives. Here, there were not only Damascus blades, but also S30V specialty steel knives. When she wanted to pick one up, she suddenly remembered how little she had contributed against Park Sang-do, and suddenly felt embarrassed to take their things. As for Pietro, he was uninterested in those weapons, just taking a simple pen as he has already used everything in this arsenal. "This is all I need." The secretary took notice of this. "Now, I will take you to the chairman's office." "Of course, we shall go there then." The only one going to the chairman's office is Kim Sung-gu. Soon after, Pietro was taken to Chairman Choi's office, and the secretary was instructed to leave. Pietro was puzzled, not knowing what Chairman Choi wanted to see him alone for. And as the president of Deha Group, one of the greatest military entrepreneurs in the world, Choi Eun-chang was all smiles. "Welcome, Kim Sung-gu." Choi Eun-chang asked about the meal and the clothes, and Pietro replied by saying it was satisfactory. "Why did you ask to bring me to you?" "I wanted to meet you. There is no other reason." But Choi Eun-chang stepped closer. "Actually, there might be a reason for you to be here. Student Kim Sung-gu, I know who you are." Hearing this, Pietro's eyes widened. "You look just like Pietro." This made Pietro smile a little. December 24th, 1978, in Namsan, a Russian soldier was being interrogated. "Talk, you bastard. Where is Choi Eun-chang?" The Russian laughed. "The only way to save the kid is if you hand over your missiles to the Soviet Union. If you refuse, the son of the Deha Group will die." Hearing this, Choi Deha felt as if his whole world had collapsed. The secretary reassured him that they had already called for help from the United States, and the most elite Delta Force was on its way to Moscow. But unfortunately, the Delta Force they sent had already been eliminated. He had no choice but to go to that place. They went to the honor church. Choi Deha, frantic and nearly out of his mind, banged crazily on the church's windows, begging the priest, "If you're willing to save my son, I'll agree to any condition. Deha Group can provide nearly 100 years of support to the church. Those 12 disciples you're raising, please send the best one. Don't worry, you need only to pray, for God's missile has already arrived in Moscow." One person, even the elite US Delta Force, has been wiped out. What can one person do all by themselves? Everything, even alone. He is enough, for my son is the strongest. Pietro arrived, opened the door to a cabin filled with Russians. "How did he get in here? Is he alone?" "That's right," Pietro replied in Russian. The Russian was confused. Then suddenly a hole was shot on his forehead. Pietro swiftly moved while firing, leaving a trail of dead bodies as he went deeper into the train. "The number of your heads match perfectly with how much bullets I have." Stepping into the next cabin, a voice shouted at him, "If you don't want a hole in this kid's head, drop your gun. I heard about you, the monster that leaves no survivors." Disciple Pietro. He raised his arms up as if to surrender, but then he started to speak in Korean. "Choi Eun-chang, duck after I count to 3. 1. What the hell are you saying? Speak Russian. 2. Stop the bullshit and kneel, you son of a bitch. 3. Pietro revealed a coin that was hidden at the back of his hand. Then suddenly, in a flash, Pietro threw the coin with all his strength, hitting the Russian right in the forehead. "Thank you for saving me. You're Korean, right? I will never forget your kindness. I will repay you." "Hey, Choi Eun-chang, I didn't come to save you," he said while putting his hat on the child. "I came to save the future of Deha Group. If you understand, then let's go. There's a long way back home." Meanwhile, back in the present, thanks to you, I'm still alive now. 40 years later, I haven't forgotten my hero's face. "So, Kim Sung-gu, am I right?" Pietro. This shocked him once again, fearing his identity must have been found. "Must be your grandfather. You look very much alike, but I didn't know he had any kin." Pietro thought to himself that it's been a while since someone scared the shit out of him. However, he was also relieved that the once frail young boy had grown up into a dashing man. Later, Choi Eun-chang chided Kim Sung-gu for only taking a simple pen. "I'm happy with just this, sir." Because of this, Choi Eun-chang decided to give him a gift. He couldn't let Pietro's grandson leave just like that. "A long time ago, your grandfather used a similar model to save me. The pinnacle of the Deha Group's technology, St. Petrus V4. This product, not for sale to the public, has the world's most powerful engine, boasts the unofficial fastest speed in the world with a top speed of 527.21 kilometers per hour, and also features stealth capabilities, even able to disrupt all signals. When on a mission, there's no need to worry about monitoring and GPS tracking." Lee Yuna's eyes went wide at the sight of the vehicle, uncontrollably going forward to caress it. "You didn't have to go this far." While Dako Hyung and Dako Jae acted uninterested, the next second they asked the secretary if they could trade their gear for this dream vehicle. But of course, the answer was no. Meanwhile, Pietro threw a helmet to Lee Yuna. "Hurry up and get on." And she agreed to do so. Just then, the killer instructor called. "Are you having fun? I shouldn't interrupt at this time, but there's something you need to know. The people from Glory want to meet you. They are very interested in you." For Pietro revved the engine, knowing it was a gathering of killers. Dako Hyung and Dako Jae's expressions turned serious. They understood this was a chance to show themselves. Just then, the two could only ride an electric scooter on the way to the gather. To the side, Lee Yuna and Pietro can only look on in shame. "Speed up, Kim Sung-gu, then they'll fall behind." "Exactly, let's get away from them." Soon after, they got ready and arrived at the Glory Club's branch church. Dako Hyung and Dako Jae were extraordinarily excited. Being popular is tiresome. "I get what you mean. Surely they know that we are assumed S ranks. Are you ready, Miss Yuna?" But Lee Yuna was too busy worrying if the brothers' excitement may cause trouble. The massive church doors were right in front of them. "Let's go inside then." When they pushed open the church doors, the scene before them far exceeded their expectations. The church wasn't large, but it was packed with people, all top killers trained by the Glory Club. This is where revelations are received. These are the missions that Glory's killers get based on their individual ranks. Hidden underneath a holy wafer for communion, the missions are distributed to the killers. To Lee Yuna, that's how real killers get their missions. But to Pietro, they were just low-ranking killers. This time, Dako Hyung and Dako Dako J received their first official mission from the group and were exceptionally excited. However, when they saw fight as the mission, they didn't understand what it meant. The priest explained that the church does not give out missions to newcomers but gives them a cup of delicious holy blood as a reward for joining the organization. Unexpectedly, the priest splashed the holy blood on Dako Hyung's head. "Is it good? We waited for you to come, you fucking D-rank bastards." Dako Hyung angrily crushed the wafer with his teeth. "You don't know what kind of person you are talking to, senior." The brothers began to stretch their muscles, ready to fight. Two church helpers stepped in front of the priest, also prepared to teach these greenhorns a lesson. Suddenly, Dako Hyung jumped at the scarred B rank with a kick, with Dako J following up with a punch. "Will become S-rank disciples like Pietro." The brothers continued their combined assault, pushing their opponent backwards. Lee Yuna watched in astonishment, sensing that their strength had become even more formidable than when they fought against Park Sang-do. The scarred B rank landed firmly on the church pew. He saw Dako J charging at him, but then realized the smaller one was missing. Then suddenly, his ankles were grabbed. "Looking for me?" Dako J then jumped up, ready to unleash a heavy blow to the scarred B rank. However, blood began to drip on Dako Hyung's face. "I also once dreamt of becoming like Pietro, but it seems I'll have to make you realize the reality of the real world." Dako Hyung exclaimed his brother's name, but was immediately punched right in the cheek. Lee Yuna tried to step forward to intervene, only to be stopped by another opponent. "How is it, seeing the real world? You know, that guy has worked his whole life to become a B rank. Normal killers who reach that rank can be considered special. The killers of the Glory Club are divided into 4 levels. D rank only carry out tasks targeting ordinary people. C rank usually deal with gangs or other armed organizations. B rank engage in combat with other killers. A rank participate in nation-level assassination missions. Above these, those who stand at the peak, the 12 disciples, symbolized by the silver crosses they hold. Efforts alone will never be enough to reach S rank. If you want to become a disciple, the only way is to die and be reborn." The scarred man raised his fist and slammed it down to Dako Hyung, knocking him out. "You are just an underling of Octopus, with no unique abilities or corresponding skills. You should be grateful to be a D-ranker. Truly shameless." At this moment, Pietro grabbed the helper's wrist. "That's enough. Don't go too far, senior." Pietro started to squeeze the wrist tighter, but he remembered Jylan's advice to not stand out and suppressed his urge to fight. "How dare you talk so arrogantly to an adult?" Lee Yuna could only watch in terror as Pietro said, "Hit me as much as you like." This made the helper pause. "But let me take them to a hospital. But I will never forget your teachings, seniors, to not dare to speak lightly of the disciples." "Fine, we'll end it here. But in return, give up your volunteer licenses." Pietro was speechless. "You can come back when you've earned it." The group walked out of the church defeated. Dako Hyung was disappointed at himself. What do we say to Instructor Gwangyu? Lee Yuna and Pietro could only look on in silence. "Sorry, Lee Yuna, Kim Sung-gu, we couldn't protect you." Dako Hyung continued to reassure them that they did well to not get involved, while Pietro looked on with a newfound respect for the young man. Dako Hyung sighed. "I'm the leader, so I need to show you guys only my cool side." Pietro put on a helmet on Dako Hyung. "Then let's go, leader. It's time to eat." Meanwhile, Pietro was driving Lee Yuna home. "Kim Sung-gu, what can I do to get stronger?" "Don't ask about such things. Why do you want that?" "I was just asking. But are you alright? Our volunteer licenses were taken away." "Things are taken away from the weak." "What an annoying answer. You suck. But it doesn't change the fact of my weakness." Lee Yuna grasped his clothes tightly, leaning against his back, everything unspoken. As night fell, the two sought entertainment outside and returned to the Glory Han River Branch Church. Under the moonlight, a dark figure was already present in the church. "Did you come to get beat up again or repent for what you did?" "Hey, don't ignore adults when they are talking." Pietro was clasping his hands together, with the silver cross of the 12 disciples in his hands. "Was it really necessary to go that far? I have come to show you what you have never seen, and what you will never see again in your life. The skills of an S-rank disciple." Hearing this, the B-rank killer with the scarred face nearly laughed his teeth off. He felt that having been a killer for 14 years, he had never even seen a disciple, let alone an S-rank disciple's combat. However, when he looked to the side, he was taken aback. Jong SSI, ranking among the top, now had a somber face. He stared at this unknown D-rank high school student who had no cover or weapons, only holding a string of holy beads, full of flaws, but his eyes revealed endless murderous intent. "Jong SSI, are you scared silly by this kid?" As Jong SSI came to his senses, he reassured himself that this was just a kid with a scary look. He pulled out a heavy book from behind. "If a junior commits mutiny against a senior, then the senior has the right to execute the junior." Jong SSI calculated in his mind, just throw the book out. The opponent will definitely defend with his arm, revealing a flaw under his ribs for attack. And when he instinctively covers his stomach after being hit, the bent posture would allow him to attack the opponent's eyes. But as he charged forward, his gaze involuntarily began to waver, and his hands lost control, flailing in the air. The young man's holy bead string was sharp beyond measure, now soaked with Jong SSI's blood. The string lashed out in the back. Then suddenly, all the columns were blasted away. Jong SSI looked horrified, but in the next second, his head was now split from his body. Jong Ssi's pupils dilated suddenly. He immediately covered his neck, gasping heavily, goosebumps rushing from his feet to his crown. Why are you just standing there? Jong Ssi was petrified right in front of Pietro, because just now, in his mind, he had clashed with Pietro thousands of times. No matter the method or form, each time he had been defeated. With decades of experience and thousands of battles behind him, Jong Ssi instinctively knew, whether or not they actually fought, he was destined to lose. The look and pressure from the other were a type of terrifying power he had never felt before. At that moment, Pietro merely lifting his hand slightly, and Jong Ssi was already crying and begging for mercy, desperately pleading to be spared. However, Pietro just gently patted his face. Senior, recognizing the presence of death is a fundamental skill for a killer. In a way, you're quite strong. Today, you've learned a valuable lesson. After saying this, Pietro strode out of the church. Jilin then appeared, coming out of the car with Alexander miking. Why do you do such things? What if it provokes a situation and the people from the Glory Club find out? It won't happen. Just think, a B-rank killer has been defeated by a D-rank newcomer, humiliated by someone 20 years younger without even throwing a punch. If you were that person, would you announce it? Jilin, pouting and still worried about him, was at a loss for words, as Pietro revved up the engine and drove away into the night. The next day, Dako Hyung and Dako Jae were trembling, worried about the killer instructor's wrath since their volunteer licenses had just been lost. Just when they felt utterly helpless, a noise scared them out of their wits. But it wasn't the coach who appeared, it was Jong Ssi. Jae, it's a ghost. Begone, you wicked ghost. Why did you come here? Sir, are you going to beat us up again? Sir, the brothers trembled in their seats. However, Jong Ssi simply handed over their volunteer licenses, and the brothers smiled widely, relieved they wouldn't be scolded by their teacher. Meanwhile, Jong Ssi's attention was already elsewhere. It was on Pietro, disguised as Kim Sung-gu, whose oppressive aura Jong Ssi still couldn't forget. Afterwards, Dako Hyung and Dako Jae thanked Jong Ssi, and Pietro smiled at this scene. It was time to return Lee Yuna's volunteer license as well. However, in the classroom, only Dako Hyung was bragging to his classmates, and Lee Yuna was nowhere to be seen. At that moment, in the training hall, Lee Yuna was furiously training against a dummy. Recalling Dako Hyung and Dako Jae's fights with Park Sang-do and their confrontation with the church helper, she realized how weak she was in comparison. She stabbed the dummy in exhaustion. If this continued, her brother Eugen would be in danger. Just then, Pietro appeared behind Lee Yuna, handing over the ID card of her killer license. I don't have the right to have that. Is it because of your brother? You feel pitiful, but you chose to be a killer unsuited for you. All for your brother, right? Don't act like you know everything. If you don't understand someone's situation, don't judge them. I don't know much about you, but I do know one thing. Your brother isn't your biological sibling. Lee Yuna was speechless. Can you tell me what happened to your brother? It turned out Lee Yuna's brother wasn't her real brother at all. He was just another child from the orphanage. Lee Yuna had always been a loner. She didn't want a family. Abandoned at a subway station locker on the day she was born, she should have died there but was saved and sent to an orphanage. Although the orphanage's conditions weren't good, it was still a place to live. She had never been interested in concepts like friends or family because she didn't want to be abandoned again. She thought it would be fine to die alone. However, during one mission, she was shot, leading to severe bleeding. During emergency treatment, she overheard people discussing, there's not much plasma left. Should we send her to Honor Hospital? Is it necessary? We could just throw her out. Kids like her are everywhere. Plus, we don't have much subsidy money these days. The staff left the medical room and Eugen followed them outside. Lee Yuna thought that this was bound to happen, and she was glad to not have any regrets. However, she woke up from the hospital bed soon after, and the doctor told her it was a miracle. Yet after her recovery, she never saw Lee Eugen again. But just then, Lee Yuna overheard the doctors talking about Lee Eugen, that he said he needed to save his sister, even if it cost his life. In the end, he became sick due to the operation. Is my Nuna all okay now? Lee Yuna felt as if her heart was breaking. She thought she had no family left, that no one would do anything for her. But Lee Eugen was there all this time. A pack of blood coagulant cost $1.7 million, and Lee Eugen needed a bottle every 5 hours. He's a ghost that's taking all my money. Let's just throw him away and stop the treatment. But just then, Lee Yuna interrupted their conversation, kneeling in front of them. Don't throw him away. I'm all better now so I can earn money. I'll pay the costs, no matter what, because I'm his Nuna. That was the first time Lee Yuna had gotten a reason to live. Who cares if he's not my real brother? Who cares if we don't look alike? I will do anything to save him. Okay, I stuck my nose into your business recklessly. I'll get going now. You should finish your training. You are the strongest person I have ever met, without exception. I beg you, help me become stronger. Pietro looked her over carefully, pondering. Lee Yuna was small, weak, timid, and had a quick temper, all of which are terrible traits for a killer. However, Miss Yuna, you have the best eyes for a killer. Lee Yuna never looked away from a fight, as if trying to absorb all of it in. From the fight with Octopus, the fight with the Dako brothers, and even Park Sang-do's quickness, your dynamic visual acuity is at the top 1%. This is a natural talent, an advantage that cannot be compensated by effort alone. So, there is a weapon that can turn your disadvantages into advantages. If you can master it precisely precisely and skillfully, you will become a truly excellent killer. When Lee Yuna saw what was in her hands, she was incredibly surprised. Can this really be enough? The next day, Dako Hyung and Dako Jae were smug about their weekly salary of 1 million won, while Lee Yuna had yet to appear. Dako Hyung guessed that Lee Yuna was probably doing a part-time job. She had to clean up traces from the scenes killers had visited. No matter if the scene was covered in excrement or viscera, she didn't mind the dirt because it provided her with a significant income. For her brother lying in the hospital bed, Lee Yuna did everything she could, while Dako Hyung and Dako Jae didn't understand. Why work so hard when you can have money for doing nothing? Just then, Dako Hyung received a text from Lee Yuna, asking him to bring her a scarf. Soon after, they arrived at a cold storage warehouse at -20°C. The two robust young men shivered from the cold, completely failing to understand why Lee Yuna would want to train in such a place. Of course, it's for training, to get stronger. How can you train in this place? It's not like you're going to break ice with your bare hands. Lee Yuna showed them the rope dart. The rope dart is a traditional martial arts weapon. It is highly flexible and can be wrapped around your body, then thrown at an enemy. The rope dart spins as it flies, which increases its destructive power. Moreover, it has a significant advantage. The enemy does not know when or from which direction it will come. So, do your best to master it, control it, let it become one with you. However, the two brothers laughed derisively. Just use a gun, it's better. A hidden weapon is so silly. Dako Hyung threw the rope dart at an ice block, which shattered it. It's pretty good, but guns are one shot, one kill. Lee Yuna disagreed and recalls what Pietro said. A gun can achieve one shot, one kill, but a rope dart is different. If the user is skilled and uses it correctly, it can achieve one shot, all kill. Hearing this, the brothers were nearly shocked out of their wits, unable to believe what was before their eyes. Soon after, the ice factory owner came to ask if Lee Yuna had finished her training. I've seen many people come here to break ice for training, even seen someone lock themselves in here for days, but seeing someone break all the ice like you, that's a first. Lee Yuna thought the owner was about to charge her for the training, but he waved it off. No need. Your friend came and paid for it, and he told me to give you wound ointment. After leaving the ice factory, Lee Yuna tried to thank Pietro through text, but she could not type anything. So instead, Lee Yuna dialed Pietro's number, wanting to thank him, but couldn't find the words. However, on the other end, Pietro spoke first. Congratulations, Miss Lee Yuna. You've finally acquired your very own real weapon. See you tomorrow. At that moment, Pietro was looking at a booklet containing detailed information on all the killers. He had long known that what Lee Yuna had been seeking had been firmly in her hands for a long time. Meanwhile, in an underground facility, Park Sang-do had slit a person's throat while he was naked. Fight me all at once. Park Sang-do was surrounded by killers, a few on the floor unmoving. But just then, a voice was heard down the hall. How annoying. Neither a B rank or C rank can kill the A rank Park Sang-do. What will it take? A disciple to come? The killers formed a line and bowed towards the man, while Park Sang-do was shocked, dropping his knife. I heard you like making bets. The disciple candidate Park Sang-do. Can you win against a real disciple? The man said with a wicked smile reflected on Park Sang-do's eyes. Disciple, Nathaniel. The next day, a child at the hospital was unwilling to get a shot, and Dako Hyung and Dako Jae laughed at her fear of needles. But the next second, they turned to plead with the nurse, begging her to be gentle. Their presence was for a new mission. Because new killer recruits must undergo a physical examination, all new members must undergo various tests at Divine Honor Hospital. The most concerning part, blood collection. The reason is simple. The Glory Club collects biometric information such as fingerprints and DNA to fit killers with a collar, which does not change with age. If anyone betrays the organization and flees, they can be tracked through this information. If young Pietro's blood was drawn, they would quickly discover that his blood type matches that of old Pietro. This means his real identity, new young killer Kim Sung-gu, is actually Pietro, would be exposed. When Pietro returned to Jaewon's residence, Jaewon looked serious. Pietro innocently mentioned, "Yes, I got blood drawn today." Jaewon exploded. "You old fool, what are you doing? I can't stand you. First, you provoke a B-rank killer, and now you dare to get blood drawn? Aren't you just blatantly telling everyone you're Pietro?" Pietro stroked his chin, seemingly amused by the situation. Jaewon was completely infuriated. "Don't you want to live?" "It's not that I don't want to live. I've thought of a way to completely escape their pursuit. I'm going to blow up the hospital." "You crazy old fool. Completely out of your mind, aren't you? Do you know what you're saying? Do you think you can mess around in that place?" Seoul Divine Honor General Hospital appears ordinary but conceals unspeakable secrets. Not only is there a department for disguising medical accidents as assassinations, but there is also an action team for disposing of abandoned corpses. Killers who come to this hospital even have dedicated VIP doctors for their treatment. Pietro was clearly aware, evidently having a plan ready. Pietro realized that his DNA was probably already stored in the hospital's data center, and destroying the database wasn't difficult. The challenge was that disciple Nathaniel was in that hospital. He is a divinely gifted doctor who disappeared after a medical accident. However, 4 years ago in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, a shocking incident occurred. After finishing his shift, a policeman rushed back to the station. As he approached the entrance, he sensed something was off. Someone was airing clothes at the station's entrance. distance, but as he got closer, the sight terrified him, causing him to crash his car in panic. It turned out that hanging at the station's entrance were not clothes but bodies of Rio de Janeiro gang members. This incident sparked an investigation by the action team, which only grew more shocking the deeper they probed. In an abandoned building, gang conflicts intensified, and the situation was far more complex than imagined. Various firearms were bent out of shape, and guns densely filled the column. The team captain sensed trouble, and suddenly, a pair of large hands emerged from the darkness, dragging a team member into a dark, eerie room. Then, the sound of bones crushing echoed, plunging the building into a horrifying silence. Soon after, chilling cries echoed from the room. Under the dim moonlight, bodies were seen hanging from the ceiling, and a tall, formidable figure slowly approached, holding a head in his hand, emitting wisps of white smoke, resembling a grim reaper. He muttered with bulging cheeks, "Give me someone stronger." The team captain, terrified, raised his submachine gun and fired wildly. However, all efforts were in vain. 6 gang bosses who had ruled Rio for 30 years, and those military personnel with outstanding combat skills were all sent to meet their ancestors within a single day. Despite Jyland's attempts to dissuade him, Pietro was unmoved. He had already devised a plan to infiltrate, but he needed Jyland's help. The next day, passers-by on the streets were drawn to the giant LED screen displaying a shocking message. On August 24th, Pietro will go to find Dr. Nathaniel. This put the entire hospital on unprecedented alert. Every doctor was armed, security personnel patrolled frequently, and even professional Brazilian mercenaries were summoned. Moreover, many were curious about the combat between S-level disciples, eager to witness such a confrontation once in their lifetime. However, no one knew when Pietro would appear, as he always moved unpredictably. Unexpectedly, Pietro was already mingling among them. As he had always said, "No need to come looking for me, I'll come to you." Meanwhile, in a high-end bathhouse elsewhere, seated were not politicians controlling the government but directors of certain groups. "Ever since Pietro was expelled, I've been very worried. Now he's clearly declaring war, but the problem is, we don't even know where he is right now. Young man, if Pietro really shows up, that's going to be a problem. You need to figure out how to handle him quickly. If you can't even deal with an old tiger without teeth, we are in big trouble. You might as well step down early. Don't end up making us clean up your mess." "Old fool, have I been too kind to you for you to start getting cocky? You're just the chief of staff of the army, and yet you dare talk to me like this? Are you underestimating me? Take a good look and see whose creation is stronger, my father's or the prodigy I've groomed." Meanwhile, Pietro was in the hospital preparing to execute his plan. Although he had the skills to make a decent living as an orthopedic doctor, his purpose for being here wasn't to practice medicine but to eliminate disciple Nathaniel. The problem was, there was no one in the hospital named Nathaniel. Could it be that he had plastic surgery and changed his name? But one thing Pietro was sure of, Nathaniel was definitely somewhere in this hospital. Just then, Pietro's communication system activated. Jyland's voice came through. "It looks like you didn't find anything in the HR department." Pietro fell into thought. How could he uncover Nathaniel without revealing Kim Sungu's identity? At that moment, a Brazilian mercenary passed by, rudely warning him, "If you don't work properly, I'll kill you." Pietro's attitude suddenly shifted 180 degrees because he thought of a good plan. If the fisher won't show himself, then deal with the bait first. He instructed Jyland to initiate that plan. Soon after, a medical staff member ran into the basement, panicked, handing over the monitor footage to the professor. The footage showed a masked person in the third-floor orthopedic surgery room fighting with Brazilian mercenary. However, the fight was completely one-sided. The formidable mercenary had no chance to fight back. The battle lasted only 10 seconds before it was over. The figure then slowly approached the CCTV camera, clearly showing it was Pietro. At this, the professor slightly lifted the corners of his mouth, excitedly saying, "He really came, finally." The professor had prepared a special VIP spot for Pietro, even looking forward to stripping him down and placing him into a custom-made human specimen display. The surveillance footage was synthesized using advanced imaging technology, even replicating the wrinkles on old Pietro's face flawlessly. With things going this far, Nathaniel had no choice but to show himself. The bait was cast. Now, it was just waiting for the fish to bite. At noon, Leuna also arrived at the hospital. She couldn't understand why the disciple Nathaniel, known as the professor, asked her to come. Could it be that the incident at the octopus restaurant had been discovered by them? Suddenly, Pietro appeared behind Leuna. "Why are you here at the hospital? You shouldn't be here by any logic." Seeing Kim Sungu so guarded, Leuna finally shared her thoughts. "You might not believe me, but I have to tell you, that grandfather I met at the bookstore clearly has a connection with you. But to save me, he was shot. If nothing went wrong, he might no longer be alive." After a moment of thought, Pietro finally said, "Although I didn't want to involve you, if you came to the hospital because of that incident, then you must have seen this person, disciple Nathaniel. Don't say you don't know him. You weren't called to join this hunting operation, were you? Is it him who brought you here?" But before Leuna could speak, a sudden noise from behind interrupted their conversation. Both turned toward the sound, and Leuna's expression grew increasingly uneasy. She felt a chill down her spine and shuddered as an invisible pressure seemed to assault her entire body. Before them stood a towering, formidable man, the current disciple, Nathaniel. Nathaniel. His gaze, fixed on Pietro, was filled with oppressive intensity. As Pietro stood up, Liuna was worried that if these two got involved with each other, they would surely end up fighting. However, Pietro extended his hand to Nathaniel. "Greetings, Professor. I'm a D-rank killer who has been assigned to this mission, Kim Sung-gu. It's an honor to meet a disciple." Nathaniel kept his gaze on Pietro and didn't say much. He then instructed Liuna to see him after he finished his rounds. "I'll see you later." Facing this top-tier killer, Pietro also felt a thrill of fear. Just a simple handshake earlier had left him tingling. Nathaniel felt the same overwhelming force, even struggling to catch the documents handed to him. His gloves even bore the imprint of his tight grip. However, the professor was not angry but rather extremely excited, as this powerful pressure was exactly what he desired. He hoped Pietro would stay by his side to become the top specimen. Soon after, an aide found Kim Sung-gu and handed him an ID card that allowed free access throughout the hospital. The professor rarely selects personal attendants, but you kid actually caught the professor's favor. "I don't know what lucky streak you're on, but remember 3 things. First, never speak before the professor asks a question. Second, never question any of the professor's decisions. And last, the most important, never decline his grace." This left Pietro bewildered, still unclear about the current situation. Not long after, he appeared before the professor. In his view were 8 burly men, each with a face that had seen countless battles, marked with a pungent smell of blood. They were neither from the Glory Club nor loyal to it. They only followed their own king, and that king was the current disciple Nathaniel. Immediately after, the aides locked down all the hospital's exits. They had already matched all elderly blood samples for DNA. Finding Pietro was just a matter of time, as no disguise could change biological information. However, they could search their whole lives in that direction and still never find me, Pietro thought as he heard their plans crystal clear. Just then, the professor said he was taking Kim Sung-gu somewhere. They walked down from the stairwell, Pietro following the professor, not knowing how long they had been walking or how deep underground they were, especially since this place wasn't marked on the blueprints or the hospital floor plan. Pietro didn't know how many floors they'd descend or how long they'd walk, and at the end of the stairs, he didn't know where it led, nor could he understand what the professor ultimately wanted to show him. Soon, with a beep, the door opened, revealing a chilling scene. Organs wrapped around each corpse. This method was truly an outrage to gods and men. The professor explained this was his place to realize his ideal, to explore all information about biology. Charles Darwin once said that all species evolve through natural selection, that evolution is prompted by chance. There's no reason to fuss over survival of the fittest, but Darwin was wrong. My selection couldn't possibly be due to nature or chance, but rather to minimize the needless weak, preserving strong genes for further development. Compared to forcibly reviving a sickly person, this is of more medical value. So, Kim Sung-gu, you would. Before the professor could finish his sentence, a huge alarm went off in the basement. The experimental subject in the underground ward was escaping. "Please, researchers in the ward, lock the doors quickly. Warning, the main A1 receptor has been activated to the 4th stage. Cannot control the experimental subject mentally." The subject frantically ran towards the door, feeling that everything would be better once he left here. Suddenly, the professor said, "I was talking about something very important, so we can't let mere experimental subject interrupt our conversation. Back to the main topic. I like strong people. So, the muscles, and even the cells of the strong, I've dissected to study, mainly because I have a person I very much want to surpass. I see all this potential in you. You're so young yet possess extraordinary strength. I want to see the results of your evolution. How strong you'll become after evolving is unknowable, but isn't this kind of thing thrilling to think about? Accept my grace, Kim Sung-gu. With my ability, I can completely make you an A rank, even turn you as strong as a disciple." After coming out of the basement, Pietro was filled with doubts. Although outwardly obeying him wouldn't have too great an impact, he still felt his unusual strength. He could clearly sense the other side of the wall and could accurately seize the moment to shatter his skull, but he was curious about the source of this power. To continue investigating, Pietro decided to delve deeper. His primary task now was to sort out the blood issue. He planned to sneak in and switch the comparison results. Jaiwan objected to his decision, noting that it's not easy to get into that kind of room, and what if he was discovered? But Pietro said that wouldn't happen, as he now had the professor's ID card, which allowed entry into any room. While accompanying Nathaniel on consultations, he always kept an eye on the time. A typical consultation lasted about 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Just find and replace within that time frame, and no one would notice. But no matter how much Pietro searched, it seemed he could not find it. On the other hand, as Nathaniel was on his way back, the doctor reported the blood sample comparison results, showing that none of the old men's blood matched Pietro's. When he returned to his room thinking about these matters, he found Kim Sung-gu there. He couldn't understand why a mere D-rank killer would enter a disciple's private room. At this moment, Pietro looked bewildered. The professor had been consulting at the same time en route every day, yet there were still 2.5 minutes until the consultation ended. Why had this guy returned so quickly? Was he doing this on purpose to show himself? Whether it was the consultations, persuading himself to accept the grace, or revealing the secrets hidden in the basement, were these just baits thrown out to lure him into revealing himself? The professor asked repeatedly. You really need to explain this clearly. With a flash of insight, Pietro responded, I came to deliver this to you. I don't know what it is, but Dr. Hong asked me to give it to you. After saying this, he immediately tried to leave, but the professor grabbed his shoulder. The professor wasn't foolish either. The traces of perusal on the documents didn't seem to come from someone unaware. What exactly are you after? Wanting to know about the old men's blood samples? What exactly are you curious about? If you can't answer these questions, the truth is quite apparent. Yet Pietro remained unusually composed. A person can change their tone and behavior, even their facial features and expressions. But one thing that cannot be faked is DNA. We've never been able to catch Pietro, so I boldly speculate that maybe Pietro is no longer the person we know. I began to look into people who have recently had plastic surgery or gender reassignment surgery, and then matched these people with the blood types on the chart, but found no matches. I'm sorry, Professor, I should have asked for your permission before looking into this, but I was so eager to catch Pietro that I got carried away and overstepped my authority. I'm sorry. The professor still harbored doubts, but Pietro's answers were flawless. Using the excuse there's dust on your face, he gently touched Kim Sung-woo's forehead and then turned to say, your dedication to your work is commendable, but you should not lose the dignity as a member of Glory. You may leave now. After Pietro left, the professor puzzledly looked at his hand. That kid's face is neither makeup nor a human skin mask. It's real young human skin. That Pietro should not be Kim Sung-woo then. Where are you really? Come out. I'm eagerly waiting to see you, and then to slowly erode you away. There is a man willing to challenge the strongest in the world at any cost. In a modern-day Roman amphitheater, known as a lawless modern coliseum, where any form of killing is unrestricted, Carter Podman, known for having the world's strongest legs, found himself utterly defenseless when he met this man. Just one move and his leg was as if it had never been part of Podman. Known for having the hardest fists in the world, when he fought this man, his own fists felt as if they were made of rubber, and the world's top gangsters were just toys to be crushed in his presence. Even though he defeated the world's strong, what they said was, you can never be the strongest unless Pietro is not in this world. This made Nathaniel incredibly irritable, because all the people he'd killed until now, all they talked about was Pietro. So, who exactly is Pietro, and where is he really? Is defeating you the only way to become the world's strongest? I have to see you and kill you myself. It's time to see the last person who saw you. Then, he instructed his subordinate, go and invite our friend. On the other side, 333rd and 334th Durankers were blaming Lee Yuna. Why did a 335th Duranker come here? Lee Yuna was annoyed, thinking how could she explain this to two egomaniacs. Just then, a voice interrupted them. Lee Yuna, go see the professor now. Don't ask any questions. Lee Yuna immediately felt uneasy, while the two brothers behind her dropped their jaws. This was A-rank Undertaker Santos. Who are you, Lee Yuna? Soon after, she arrived at the professor's room. Without wasting words, the professor showed her a photo of Pietro and said, you must be the first person to have survived a foe even the disciples struggle against. At first, I thought Pietro let you go on a whim, but you also survived your fight with Park Sang-do. You are just skilled with some knife techniques, with nothing particularly special about you. As a D-rank killer, Miss Lee Yuna, how did you manage to survive? Is this some kind of miracle? However, including myself, the disciples have a hypothesis. From the time at the Octopus restaurant to the secret base of Park Sang-do, you have been aided by Pietro. As a form of payment, there must have been some kind of deal between you. But you, coming from an orphanage, owning nothing but your body, what could you possibly do for Pietro? This is indeed a puzzling question. Or are you a double agent? I understand you had no choice, especially since you have a brother to take care of. I heard your brother Lee Eugen has hemophilia, a hereditary coagulation disorder that is a bleeding disease. With complications, he has almost no hope of recovery in the next 3 years. He is so young, truly pitiful, isn't it? However, I can save your brother. Our honor hospital has developed a serum worth $4.5 billion. Just one injection, and he will be cured. Now, you should understand which side you should stand on. Lee Yuna, unable to refuse, hurriedly asked, what exactly can I do? The professor burst into laughter. Of course, you will be my bait. Pietro said he would come to find me on the 24th. No matter what, you need to tell him to meet me at the hospital hall's clock tower on the 24th. With your abilities, it's absolutely impossible to earn $4.5 billion in 3 years. This way, you can save your brother, and I can find Pietro. This is a win-win deal you cannot refuse. Think it over well, but before that, I need to arrange a place for you in the hospital. With this diagnosis, Lee Yuna was extremely shocked. Don't be surprised. In my hospital, you can't be admitted without a disease. But if you refuse my proposal, you know who'll end with this diagnosis next. Miss Lee Yuna, see you at our consultation. Nuna, I really want to go to the international soccer match, but the tickets are so expensive. You're so young. Why worry about money? Don't worry, I've already found a way. Lee Yuna, enduring severe pain, finally did not make a sound out of place and hung up the phone. Soon after, Lee Yuna was sent to room 604. At this time, she was extremely worried. If the professor knew that Kim Sung-woo had been helping her all along, all three of them would lose their lives. But if she made the right choice, her brother could live well. This put her in a dilemma. Suddenly, a voice interrupted her thoughts. silence. Turning her head, Kim Sung-gu had already opened the door. Lee Yuna was speechless. At such a time, this person was still running around. However, Pietro looked serious. He couldn't understand what was wrong with Lee Yuna. As her teacher, he never remembered his disciple having broken her arm before. He questioned Lee Yuna. What exactly happened? Lee Yuna was lost in thought, her mind a mess, and she stuttered. Are you free on the 24th? Pietro puzzled. What's up with the 24th? Regardless, come under the clock tower at 2 p.m. on the 24th. I have something to tell you. Although Pietro noticed Lee Yuna's unease, he didn't ask further and simply agreed to her request quietly. After Pietro left, Lee Yuna cried her eyes out, unsure whether what she was doing was right or wrong. She had no one to confide in and had to bear it silently. However, Pietro saw all of this. On August 24th, the professor, full of anticipation, arrived early at the hospital hall because he longed for Pietro's appearance. At that moment, Lee Yuna was extremely anxious. She had no idea how to explain things to the professor. As the clock struck 2, she wasn't sure whether her choice was right or wrong, but she had no other option because she couldn't overcome the barrier in her heart. Actually, when in the room, the clock tower Lee Yuna mentioned wasn't actually the hospital hall's clock tower, but the one in the yard. At that time, the hospital hall was swarming with killers. If Nathaniel knew that the real person who killed the octopus was Kim Sung-gu, then facing these net-like killers, even Kim Sung-gu, as skilled as he was, would probably struggle to cope. She remembered the moment Kim Sung-gu suddenly appeared, a person filled with doubts, but it was also the first time she realized how happy it was to have someone by her side. Their arguments at school, or enjoying fun times at the amusement park, and the feeling of dependence during critical moments, Kim Sung-gu brought her immense security. Even he was the only one who knew her true abilities. How could she possibly betray him? Therefore, Pietro was successfully diverted as per the agreement, and Lee Yuna hoped he would leave quickly. As time ticked by, the professor started questioning Lee Yuna. Why hasn't Pietro arrived yet? At that moment, she trembled all over and stammered. Actually, I haven't seen Pietro since that day. I lied to you because I was desperate to get the medicine to save my brother. You can make me do anything. Please just don't harm my brother. Lee Yuna collapsed to the ground, sobbing heavily. She couldn't betray Kim Sung-gu, nor could she resist the disciples of the Glory Club. However, the professor was not satisfied with such a response. A useless deranged killer like Lee Yuna, unable to bring Pietro here, meant she had lost her value, and there was only one outcome: eliminate her. With the sound of a fence breaking, numerous seasoned killers surged forward. Fire alarm, medical staff and all patients, please evacuate quickly. Suddenly, the hospital was thrown into chaos. After the crowd had left, all the emergency fire doors were shut, and those inside the hospital panicked. Even the professor was no exception. There was neither smoke nor a stifling heat inside. Just when everyone was bewildered, a familiar figure appeared. Pietro. He spoke into a walkie-talkie to everyone. I'm right here. At that moment, Pietro was very aware that ordinary people think of escaping to safety first when a fire breaks out. So, everyone here is neither actual medical staff nor patients, but killers who are here to kill me. Nathaniel was very confused, puzzled by Pietro's mention of me. Although he knew that Pietro was no ordinary person, let alone a regular killer, he never expected Pietro to play the hero. You don't really think you, a deranged killer, can handle them, do you? They are agents funerarios. In the favelas of Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, children usually don't live past 16 years. Large numbers of people die every day, hence it's called the town of funerals. There, survival of the fittest is the law. Only the strong have a chance to survive. There, various illegal activities thrive. Kidnapping, drugs, illicit trade, you name it, it's there. And from there, the top 100 survivors are now gathered in this hospital. Kim Sung-gu, since Pietro didn't come, it's also a good chance for me to see how deep your potential really is. Right now, you are like a tiger cub, not yet a fierce beast. Facing a pack of hyena-like beasts, you should find it hard to defend yourself. Stop acting like a child, accept my grace, and let me make you stronger. Pietro seemed unconcerned, shrugging helplessly. Nathaniel understood what he meant. In an instant, two fell from a high place. Two deranged killers, carrying sharp blades, jumped down, but before they could even rejoice for 2 seconds, Pietro easily slit their throats. This shocked everyone present. He killed the killers who dropped from the sky without even looking, even accurately targeting their vital points. And his weapon was just a pen. Do you still think I'm just a tiger cub now? Killing a person is easy. Severing an artery takes only 1 minute and 12 seconds. A vein only 40 seconds. If it's the carotid artery, only 12 seconds. No matter how strong, everyone dies. Assuming it takes 1 minute to kill a person, and there are 100 seasoned killers here, as a deranged killer, can you last 100 minutes? In an instant, the killers swarmed him. Pietro faced these people without any panic, but the constant flow of attackers gradually pushed him into a corner. Because these killers, even if a companion dies, do not care at all. Their fighting will remain unshaken. Although Pietro was extremely fast, able to mercilessly dodge strike after strike, his stamina was not infinite. Even he began to feel out of breath. The professor was very curious about this. The professor thought, how much more can he surprise me? Not only was there no way out behind him, but dozens of killers also blocked Pietro's path. Pietro paused for a moment, indeed outnumbered, but being cornered was part of his plan. man. He reached out toward the direction of a fire hydrant, and the agent's funerarios were confused, not knowing what he was planning to do. Suddenly, he grabbed a fire hose, and a fierce stream of water gushed out, scattering the agent's funerarios. Just as Pietro was having fun, the high-pressure water hose suddenly ran out of water. The fun times are always short-lived. The killers took the opportunity to catch their breath, but a water hose doesn't kill people. Pietro turned to find a defibrillator. In the blink of an eye, the agent's funerarios fell one by one, but at that moment, the high voltage also lost its power due to a short circuit. The professor admired this move. This kid being cornered was just a ruse. Using the water hose was to make them think he was out of options, but it was all a setup for using the defibrillator. Although the number of opponents had decreased significantly, there were still more than half of the agent's funerarios alive. Pietro picked up a clipboard from the ground, drew a few strokes with a pen on it, and then threw it towards the agent's funerarios. The clipboard had a human figure drawn on it, with a big red cross at the neck. Pietro slowly walked towards the crowd. A carotid artery wound leading to excessive bleeding will be the cause of death for all of you. Pietro's astounding combat performance left Liuna stunned. Although she had heard legends about Pietro before, he looked no different from an ordinary old man. Despite fighting with all his might, that was all there was. He didn't seem like the legendary figure from the stories, capable of taking on 1,000 people single-handedly. If that legend were true, it should look exactly like what was seen today. Before long, Pietro had dealt with the remaining people. The professor was ecstatic. This kid just took down 100 people in 13 minutes. He really is of great research value. However, Pietro said, "It's not over yet. Aren't you still alive? Should I come up, or will you come down? You choose." Accompanied by a loud cracking sound, Nathaniel jumped down. As soon as he landed, Pietro felt a strong aura. "This should answer your question. I also have a question I'm very curious about. I can't understand why you are so strong at such a young age. Being classified as a D-rank killer is puzzling. Do you have another identity, or are you a spy from another country? You really are becoming more and more exciting. I'm also curious about something. Do insecure people always talk a lot?" Nathaniel gave a slight smile. There's a difference between being bold and being arrogant. Pietro was full of doubts. How could he change his path mid-attack? It was a straightforward move, yet he changed direction in an instant and sent me flying. Such an unrealistic burst of power makes one instinctively fear. Seeing this, Liuna was completely stunned. If Kim Sungu continued like this, he would eventually be killed by Nathaniel. Nathaniel closed the elevator door. He had already seen Pietro's fight and knew clearly, this kid is fast, but if you fight in such a confined space, can you still run away? Are you really going to be like this? Where's your fighting spirit from before? I thought you'd be a fun opponent, but you're just like the other guys. Suddenly, the elevator cables snapped, and it started falling fast. A loud crash echoed as it hit the ground, and dust filled the air. The professor dusted himself off and scoffed. "I clearly came for Pietro today, but why did you come instead? Do you have some connection with Pietro, or are you already dead? But that's normal. No one who has fought with me has ever had a good end. Only those who comply survive." However, there were no marks on Pietro's face, not even dust. It turned out that Nathaniel's fierce attacks had been cleverly neutralized by Pietro, hardly expending any energy. "Sorry, I really must apologize. Fighting with you is so boring. It's making me sleepy." These words completely enraged Nathaniel. When had he ever been mocked like this? Pietro waved his hand. "Come on, it's time I got serious." Nathaniel exploded with rage, springing into action and rushing towards Pietro. The moment their fists collided, the entire basement shook. All of this was clearly described to Jaiwan through the surveillance. Even the German shepherd couldn't help but emit a fierce roar. Jaiwan calmly soothed the dog. "Don't worry about this level. That man's fists aren't made of dough." Because 55 years ago, when Pietro was still a child, he was taught the root of strength requires not only calm judgment but also a physical force that no one can resist. Their teacher had demanded that they break a granite rock, no matter what it took. Everyone else thought it was impossible, while Pietro, without any doubt, silently wrapped his hands in bandages. Others thought he was crazy. How could he possibly break the granite? Yet, Pietro practiced day and night. One morning, a month later, a few colleagues mocked secretly. "That fool has been at it for a month, and the rock doesn't even have a scratch." However, one of the girls was shocked by the scene before her, and the leading boy was stunned speechless. Below the cliff, hundreds of shattered granite pieces lay quietly. Could all these have been broken by Pietro? Even a strong man, known for his ability to lift 524 kilograms, had been defeated by Nathaniel. But when facing Kim Sungu, he couldn't hold back his strength. Just then, Pietro suddenly asked the professor, "Have you ever been hit by a truck?" The professor was puzzled. "What do you mean by that?" "Because my hand chop hurts more than getting hit by a ton-weight truck." Pietro suddenly became serious. At that moment, Nathaniel crawled out of an experimental tank, and Pietro's hands were covered in wounds. Nathaniel slowly stripped off his clothes, revealing a secret for the first time. As he took off his shirt, he completely shocked Pietro. Is this what he calls self-directed evolution? How insane must he be to have modified his own body like this? Nathaniel's upper body was completely devoid of skin, covered entirely by pulsating muscles. He was once a genius boy chosen by God, and when he entered medical school, there was a solemn ceremony. They all had to swear to heaven to dedicate their lives to serving humanity. No matter what happened, they were not allowed to use medical knowledge for acts that contravened human ethics. Such a boy, envied by everyone, was actually a sickly person who spent his days in the hospital. Everyone said he was a child chosen by God, but he, still so young, didn't understand. Was being weak also a part of being chosen? However, he once saw a documentary about the animal world that talked about crawfish in the red marsh shedding their old shells to grow new ones, becoming bigger and stronger. At that moment, Nathaniel seemed to have an epiphany. Perhaps this was divine guidance. Humans can't strengthen themselves by shedding like animals, so he decided to be the first to achieve this goal. One day, a patient who had been shot and was bleeding heavily was brought to the hospital, and the lead surgeon was Nathaniel, now a graduate. For him, having conducted tens of thousands of surgeries, this was just a routine operation. But when the patient lay on the operating table and Nathaniel was about to make the incision, he was completely shocked by what he saw. This man was the strongest-bodied person he had encountered among all humans. The person before Nathaniel, possessing such a robust body, puzzled him. What was different between him and himself? How could he attain such a physique? Looking at this nearly perfect body, Nathaniel was both curious and mesmerized, even wanting to dissect it right there to find out. Yet, reason pulled him back to reality. He told himself, I am a doctor with professional ethics, obligated to preserve humanity, just as I swore when I entered school. The world's population is decreasing, and it is a blessing for humanity that people like me are stepping forward. But then, an image suddenly appeared in Nathaniel's mind. Wouldn't everyone be happy if all humans became stronger? This so-called anthem of human rights is nothing but a stumbling block to human evolution. Yes, Nathaniel muttered to himself, it should be someone like me who leads, becoming the first to achieve the evolution of a new humanity. It's time to shed this weak body, as that is the law of nature. The weak should be eliminated. Only strength is the absolute truth. When the voice in his head faded, he was completely shocked by the scene before him. What was supposed to be a simple organ suture turned into him dismembering the patient's body, cutting it apart, even performing a craniotomy. From then on, Nathaniel fled the city, becoming penniless. He eventually hid in a small village in Brazil. Nathaniel chose this place because it was filled with the research subjects he needed. He conducted tens of thousands of experiments here, using them to validate his research findings. He had to kill the strong to prove his growth and strength. For this, he even replaced one of his legs at all costs to compensate for his body's deficiencies. Without relying on his parents' DNA, he transformed himself into a new kind of human. This was the result of Nathaniel's evolution. Intangible cultural heritage? No, it far exceeded that level. Anti-fragility means, if he is not killed outright, the damage inflicted only makes him stronger, because muscles become tougher and stronger through the process of tearing and healing. Nathaniel also developed a drug that significantly shortens the time it takes for muscles to recover. This means, the more Pietro attacks his body, the stronger he becomes. The basement was filled with thick smoke, and Nathaniel was even more excited, because before this, no one had ever escaped from his grasp. However, this young man, in the moment he was about to be captured, used 0.1 seconds to slip his hand through the gaps in his palm, thereby creating space to escape, surpassing the reaction speed of current humans and making the correct decision in an instant. Pietro was also somewhat wary. Although it was just a grab by Nathaniel, the back of his hand felt as if it had been nailed down. If Nathaniel had grabbed Pietro's head, his fate would not have been much better than the test subject. At this moment, Nathaniel became even more manic, proclaiming, "Go on, show me more of your abilities. Although you're a bit stronger than an A-rank killer, do you really have the strength to defeat me? I'm still getting stronger. If you beg me like a dog now, maybe I'll show mercy and spare you, even make you into the most handsome evolved being." Pietro was momentarily speechless, thinking to himself, this ignorant brat. He slowly raised his hand, and Nathaniel thought he was going to surrender. But instead, Pietro swung his hand down and said, "Disobedient troublemakers only learn when they're beaten into submission." These words infuriated Nathaniel, but they also gave him an unprecedented thrill. This was his first time experiencing such an exhilarating fight. Pietro was truly strong, unlike anyone he had ever faced before. However, Nathaniel always believed in one unchanging law: his body is still evolving, becoming more invincible. He didn't know just how strong his body could become, but there remained an unresolved mystery about Kim Sung-gu. Nathaniel always felt that beneath the capability charts, there lay secrets no one knew. From his eyes, one could see an unshakable resolve, a charge without hesitation. "What makes you think you can walk away from this fight unscathed? I'm going to cut you up, from all the small bones in your body to your cells. I'm going to cut you all up and examine you." At that moment, Nathaniel delivered what was meant to be a fatal blow, but his punch hit the floor instead, everything going exactly as Pietro had anticipated. Because Nathaniel had said, muscles grow larger and more robust when damaged, and they heal faster. However, when muscles become stronger than before, at their peak developmental state, they swell and compress the bones and nerves. Now, Nathaniel couldn't even move a finger. This was because he was so engrossed in the fight that he failed to notice his body gradually stiffening. Within just 2.5 minutes, Pietro identified the blessing's side effects and cleverly used them in combat. Nathaniel couldn't accept this reality. To gain this power, power, he had carried countless lives on his hands and endured unimaginable pain to forge himself into a near-perfect human. Yet now, this young kid had easily pinpointed his weakness. Despite this, Nathaniel laughed excitedly. "I never thought I'd use this." He peeled a sticker from his shoe, revealing that it was a drug hidden there. This drug dissolved muscle, turning him into an ultimate biological entity. A drug that could instantly dissolve vital signs. It could turn an adult man into a puddle of blood in just 3 minutes. Nathaniel planned to use this time to die alongside Kim Sung-gu. Nathaniel decided to burn his life at the peak of his power to fight this young man to the death. However, Pietro predicted all his attack patterns, and Nathaniel felt a creeping sense of eeriness spreading. This D-rank killer, Kim Sung-gu, had a presence on the capability chart that transcended the diagrams, an insurmountable wall of experience that Nathaniel had never been able to defeat in his life. How could someone so young have such experience? Was he like the mythical Pietro he had chased his whole life? At this moment, Nathaniel's spine was completely shattered, and his muscles were still accelerating their dissolution. Nathaniel couldn't understand how, after 30 years of striving to be stronger and enduring countless hardships, he could lose to a D-rank killer. He asked resentfully, "What efforts have you made?" Pietro stroked his chin, pondered for a moment, and said, "I know the obsession you face against everything in this world. Speaking of efforts, I have devoted a full 65 years. At this, Nathaniel was left speechless. Despite his medical background and many things he couldn't understand, the insurmountable mountain had always been right beside him. But at least, in the last moments of his life, he finally saw Pietro. With that, Nathaniel permanently closed his eyes. The battle that erupted in Honor Hospital thus ended, and Nathaniel and all his killers were utterly defeated. To hide the information, all records of these individuals were cleanly erased by the Glory Club. However, the killer instructor and his 4 students were unscathed. But sitting in the back, Lee-Yuna no longer wore her usual smile. She was silent, her face clouded with worry. Lee-Yuna was filled with concern for her brother. What should she do about her brother? Pietro seemed to read her thoughts and quietly told her, "Don't worry too much. There will always be a solution." When they returned to Divine Honor High School, the teacher urged them to go back and rest. But Pietro reminded Lee-Yuna, "Don't leave your things behind." Lee-Yuna was taken aback, feeling puzzled as she hadn't brought anything with her. But when she opened the package, she was completely stunned and tears unconsciously started flowing. Inside the package box were bottles of the medicine her brother needed. Pietro didn't say much, only softly reminding her, "Remember to administer the medicine to your brother on time." Lee-Yuna's tears streamed down uncontrollably as she had no idea how to thank him for this immense favor. Meanwhile, the patients of Honor Hospital had been transferred to other hospitals, and unrelated personnel would not know what had transpired inside. The marks of battle here made it hard for anyone to believe they were caused by humans. Was it Pietro? Yes, the surveillance caught his face, yet despite that, no one saw him in person, nor did anyone notice his presence as he entered or exited the hospital. "He's like a ghost." "What did you say? Did you just mention a ghost?" "No, I didn't mean that. Forgive me for saying Pietro is a ghost." "A ghost? Where do you get the courage to use that word in front of me? I killed your men. You're not angry, are you?" "No, you are my favorite subordinate." Nathaniel really had it coming. Dying before receiving the new disciple training was truly disgraceful. "Pietro, it seems you need some lessons to keep you in line."